Hello, Bob Van Malsom with Market Pro. And the question is, and I think the question that should be asked is, can executive searches fail? Do executive searches fail? And what ultimately leads to that failure? And depending on what industry publications and data sets you read and believe, right, somewhere between 5 and 12% of executive searches don't end up in a hire. And that's worst case scenario for everybody, right? It's worst case scenario for the client because they've paid a retainer fee and a progress fee, or possibly the entire fee, depending on how their agreement is structured, and they haven't placed anybody in the organization. They're not further along from an executive leadership team perspective. It's the worst thing possible for the search firm, the way we view it, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they didn't win. And that hurts internally, that hurts the culture, that hurts the team. And you could argue, and maybe some firms do, I don't look at it that way, that they were able to get payment, so therefore they're fine. I look at it a little differently than most, so I think it's a failure for the executive search firm as well. So lots of things can lead to that, meaning the search firm couldn't have been the right firm that you picked from the beginning. They didn't have the expertise to fill the position properly. There could have been a disconnect on what was the realities of compensation in the market, right, versus the type of talent that I'm looking for. There could have been other challenges relative to the client's ability to understand what they were looking for and interview that effectively. So there are multiple reasons why this can fail. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that the client gets talent that helps their organization move forward and grow. So if you look at it from our history perspective, right, we've now done over 300 chief marketing officer searches and over 300 more executive level marketing searches that are in e-commerce, digital, product, performance marketing, brand, communications, other senior level marketing roles that are mission critical to helping an organization grow. And so we'll call it 650 searches. It's not the exact number, but it's pretty darn close. And we've had one search that has failed. It hadn't worked. We didn't finish it. We didn't complete it. We had to walk away. And it happened because the client called us and said, we're looking for a chief marketing officer. Here's what we need, right? And here's the industry we want to pull candidates from. Here's the background we want. And here's our budget. And we said, okay, we're excited about working with you. What you're asking for is doable. Your budget is significantly low. And we want to let you know that going in. But what we'll do is we'll send you the best talent possible. And we'll send you the best talent that fits within your budget. And then you can make a business decision as to how you want to go forward. And they were like, great, let's do that. And that's exactly how the search progressed. We ended up sending them 3, 4, 5, I don't remember exactly, candidates that were the top talent in the industry, that were what they needed from a chief marketing officer perspective, and 3, 4, 5 candidates that were the best of what they could afford. And they said, wow, you've really shown us. The CEO is a great guy, and he and I have done work together, multiple searches together since then. He said, hey, you guys have shown us exactly what we needed, right? Which is, this is the type of talent I need, but they're not fitting my budget. So I said, what direction do you want to go, right? What is it you're looking for? He's like, at this point in time, we have to shut the search down. There's nothing else that I can do today based on challenges I have with bringing this person in and then creating problems around internal equity that I'm not ready to challenge, that I'm ready to solve today. So we have to push this off. But at this point in time, you guys have done exactly what you said you would do, and we're putting the search on hold. We're canceling the search basically. So we didn't win. But our job is to stick with the client for as long as possible until we create a win. But that was one where communication is very transparent, and everyone walked away understanding the situation. And the CEO, as I said, the CEO's come back to us a couple of times since then, and we've done work together. But interestingly, I think we're now at our time where, for the second time in our history, we're going to end up having to walk away from a search. And it's a very different situation and scenario. We have $200+ million manufacturing business, more than 25 years old and still founder-led, really bright entrepreneur and exciting opportunity, exciting company, lots of growth prospects ahead of them. Every part of the organization is super buttoned up and highly efficient, and the only missing piece is marketing. So 200+ million, I think they can be 500 million if they get the right chief marketing officer. And where we are specifically is two things. There's two challenges. First challenge is they want someone who is very data-driven, very analytical, digital-first, performance marketing executive. And they require somebody from the industry. Both of those are smart from a requirement perspective. Industry challenges, 80% of the companies in their industry have brand comms type CMOs. So the more modern, digital-first, analytically driven performance marketing CMO is the exception in the industry. It's not the rule. So that's problem A. And problem B is we are again in a situation where we have a significant gap in compensation, right? We are a solid $125,000, $150,000 a year under market on compensation. And we've worked very hard with this client to show them those things. And they said, look, we understand, right? We understand what you're saying and we agree with what you're saying, but we're not able to change those things, right? So our compensation is not changing. Our requirements are not changing. And we need you to do the best you can to find us the right person. And so what we've been able to do is find some exceptions to the rule, right? So there is a gentleman who we put forward. He had the exact background that they were looking for. He was actually local, so wouldn't require relocation. And he actually fit in the budget. But you look at his background, you say, well, he's well below market. Well, that happens, right? It happens. There are times out there where people are not compensated at market rate. And for various reasons, he was at that spot in his career. And then we got very far along in the interview process, and he walked away and said, hey, I'm actually going to get a promotion with my company that I'm with now. And so this isn't going to be the right next step for me. Okay. So we've now gone through the process, right, of presenting them 18 candidates. Now, what does that mean? What's normal? Normal is we would present 6 or 7 candidates per search. And on a relocation search, maybe 7 or 8, an extra candidate or 2, because relocation's never been harder. So we presented 18 candidates. And we have 2 that are still going through the interview process. And hopefully we ended up in a situation where one of those 2 candidates gets hired. But if we end up in a situation where neither of those candidates is interesting to our client, or the candidate is not interested in the role after interviewing with our client, we're pretty much at a point where there's nothing left. And what I mean by that is we have scoured everybody in their industry. We've spoken to everybody in the industry. And we've presented them with every candidate that was an A player that was interested in the role, with that digital first focus, the analytics, performance marketing, and others that had less of that background but were within the budget, right? And so they've seen the best of what's possible. And we can sit here today and honestly say there are no other ponds to fish in. There are no other rocks to look under. There is no one in the industry that we've spoken to there's no one in the industry that we haven't spoken to after doing a very detailed and exhaustive executive search process. So while if we end up having to walk away, that's terrible, right? It's not a win for us. It's not a win for the client. But at the end of the day, we can walk away knowing we did everything possible to be successful for them and be proud of the way we handled the situation. Now, regardless of how it works out, meaning we can hire somebody and we'll get the third piece of our fee, right? Or we can not hire somebody and we can be limited to our retainer and progress fee. Based on the time we've put in, we're going to lose money on this search. And that's where I think a lot of executive search firms walk away too quickly, right? Maybe they're publicly traded and they're tied to quarterly numbers, and they can only put so many hours into a search, right? And I understand that, right? That's the reality of the business. We're privately held, and we take a very long-term view of our business, and we take a very long-term view of relationships with our clients. So we can stick with something for trying to do it the right way, even when it may not be the best thing from a pure profit perspective in the short term, right? And if we do end up there, let's say this is one of these two candidates, neither of these two candidates gets the job, and we end up having a conversation with the CEO and saying, hey, we've done everything possible, and there's nothing else we can do to help you with this search. They already know that's coming, right? The CEO is smart. The head of HR is very smart. And, in our communication up until this point in time, it's pretty clear that they're surprised that we haven't already moved past it, right? We haven't already said to them, hey, based on where the search is, based on how many candidates we've presented, we're at the limit of what we can do. And they would have not been surprised if we had did that after the first 10, 11, 12 candidates, and we're now at 18, right? So there won't be any challenge with them being upset. There won't be any challenge with them not understanding where we're coming from, because they can obviously see that everything possible has been done for us to set them up to be successful. And in this case, it may or may not work out. We'll see in the next couple of weeks. But at the end of the day, our view is, if you're going to spend the money to retain us, right, to go out and find you top leadership talent for your organization, then it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we do everything, and I mean everything possible, to be successful for you. And so that in the future, you know that you can count on us when you come back and you need additional talent. And we take a very long-term view of that, not a short-term view, which I think is overly prevalent in the industry.